Live from our studio centre in Moscow, this is RT with international news and comment 24 hours a day. CIA leaker Edward Snowden has officially requested temporary asylum in Russia. The whistleblower has been stranded in a Moscow airport for over 3 weeks now. RT's Andrew Farmer is following his quest for refuge.
Well, it does appear that his 3-week ordeal in the transit area of Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport will soon come to an end, and that is because the Russian Migration Service has said it has now received an official application from him for temporary asylum in Russia. And although that will take 3 months to process, in the meantime, and we think within probably 5 days, he will be issued documents which will allow him to leave that transit area, to pass through passport control and effectively walk on Russian soil a free man. We do know a couple of things about his application. Firstly, a lawyer that has been consulting with him has said that on that application, Mr. Snowden has made it very clear that he feels that he would be tortured if he returned to the US. We also know that Mr. Snowden has agreed Russia's precondition of giving him asylum, and that was that he should no longer damage the US. Mr. Snowden has said that he will not harm the US while he is on Russian territory. This is probably part of a much wider plan for Edward Snowden, even though if he was granted asylum, he would be allowed to live and work in Russia for up to 1 year. He has said in a press conference on Friday that his wider plan is to travel to Latin America, where he has been granted asylum in principle by 3 countries, those being Venezuela, Nicaragua and Bolivia. In the meantime, President Putin has said that Russia should not be blamed for this ongoing saga, and said, if anything, it's been compounded by America's actions.
We didn't invite Edward Snowden, and Russia wasn't his final destination anyway. He was in transit. But as soon as he began his journey, his route was revealed, and our US partners effectively blocked him from taking any further flights. They even made other countries afraid of taking him in. No one wants to. So he ended up blocked on our territory.
It's fair to say this story is far from coming to an end at the moment, but today's news that he has officially applied for temporary asylum in Russia is one small step towards that, and in effect that he will now be able to leave, we understand, the transit area of Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport within 5 days, that after being stuck there for over 3 weeks.
So Snowden is now waiting for his request to be reviewed by Russian colleagues, Russian officials. And my colleague Yulia Shapovalova discussed it with RT's news editor Ivor Crotty earlier. And he says Moscow is playing it smoothly.
Our understanding is that this initial request, this initial submission that's been confirmed by the Federal Migration Service can be reviewed for up to 3 months. So what we're hearing is that Snowden will be given some form of temporary refuge or temporary asylum status. This, interestingly, I think moves him from a stateless status into something a little bit more concrete after the US revoked his passport when he left Hong Kong. So I think Snowden then finds himself with some paper, and some paper, as any reader of Russian literature will tell you, some paper is better than no paper. And I think Snowden's probably in a better position and may well be allowed to exit the transit area of Sheremetyevo Airport, where he's been holed up for the last 3 weeks. And if he is allowed to get out from there, well, then that gives him opportunities to visit the other embassies of, for example, as Andy mentioned, Venezuela, Nicaragua and Bolivia in Moscow, and perhaps establish formal asylum request procedures there. And basically...
So Russia is giving him asylum, or temporary asylum, but doesn't want him to stay for good. Well, what does it mean? In my opinion, I think they're playing this Snowden situation very well. It's very clear that this was not a situation of their making, not an entirely welcome situation either, as far as the Kremlin would be concerned. But I think they've done it very well. On the one hand, Putin has made it very clear that Snowden would not be allowed continue to damage the famous our US partners while under Moscow's jurisdiction.
absolutely unacceptable. And as we all know, Vladimir Putin's word is Vladimir Putin's word. That's not going to happen. On the other hand, the involvement of Anatoly Kucherina, who has a background in human rights work, and has probably helped shore up the human rights aspect of it, and they seem to be playing the human rights aspect of Snowden's asylum request by the book. So I think the Kremlin seems to be coming out of this in a reasonably strong position.
So Russia will most likely prove to be just a stopover for Snowden before he heads elsewhere. Latin America is the most likely destination for the whistleblower. Let's see where exactly he could end up. Well, Glenn Greenwald, the Guardian journalist, the man who's released much of what Snowden has leaked, thinks that Venezuela is the best option. Bolivia is also among the front runners, especially after the grounding of its president's plane in Europe caused such anger. Nicaragua says it's willing to grant asylum after receiving an application from Snowden. And then there is Ecuador. That's another option, despite the US urging it not to help Snowden like it did with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Well, so far, Snowden has pledged to stick to Russia's conditions to stop harming the US. But Jim Killock, he's from the Open Rights Group, hopes he will continue the leaks as soon as he can.
I hope it doesn't mean that he has to not talk about what the United States have been up to in broad policy terms. I mean, he's been very careful not to threaten individual operations, not to expose particular agents, or to make claims which would result in people's safety being compromised. Rather, he's been talking about the broad programs that the United States and the UK have been dealing with. He says he's got a lot of material, and I certainly hope he has more to tell us. It does seem that way. He's completely changed the debate right now, and it's very important that debate keeps happening. I think a lot of things are happening in the wake of that. There are at least 2 legal actions being launched in the UK on the back of what he's revealed. I expect there'll be more in the USA. The tech companies are challenging on the basis of their own free speech, and also to clear their names about what's been going on. So there is a lot to happen whether or not he's got more material to give, but I really would like to see whether he has got more to say, and I hope he does.